On today's show, Khobi Price and I discuss first impressions of the Lakers preseason. Can Jarred Vanderbilt push for the fifth starter spot? Deandre Ayton's activity and defense, what they need to work on over the next week of practice, and what we are most looking forward to over the rest of the preseason, including an announcement from LeBron that dropped during the podcast. So we react live, that and more on today's show. On a somber note, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my cousin who passed a few days ago, Jovan Buha. He was a priest in Serbia, also a giant basketball fan, a giant Red Star fan. So wanted to give him a much deserved acknowledgement. Rest in peace.
Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another episode. On today's show, thrilled to be joined by now 7-time guest, I believe.
Seven-time.
Tom Brady
like Robert Orr.
of Buha's Block.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's my
Robert
guy,
Horry.
too.
You know what? Yeah, I was giving you Tom Brady, but if you want to be Robert Horry, that's okay too.
I'll
get into his Hall of Fame case and whether he should be in or not. But Khobi, how you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. You know, it's interesting. You know, you have 2 preseason games like within 3 days. So also like they're of the teams that played domestically. Like it feels like everyone else is just now starting to have their preseason, and we've already gotten 2 games. So from that standpoint, it's interesting. I'm sure we'll get into it, but overall, I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Basketball is back. Lakers basketball is back. We actually have stuff to talk about, not just projecting out what we think is going to happen or what we're hearing is happening in training camp and practices and whatnot. So let's get into it. The Lakers played 2 games over the weekend. Friday in Palm Desert against Phoenix, Sunday in San Francisco against the Warriors. They lost both games, but no Luka Doncic, no LeBron James, no Marcus Smart, no Adu Thero, no Maxi Kleber, and then no Austin Reeves for the second game. So from a results perspective, I'm not surprised. I expected the Lakers to lose both games once I saw who was available, who the starters were. But what has been your biggest takeaway through these first couple games?
I mean, I put it in writing. I'll say it verbally. It's just so hard to take away something like meaningful from games when I shook my head just like, oh my goodness, all these names of guys who aren't playing. Jeez,
It's a long list, yeah.
a laundry list, and that's I mean, that's just getting to the main guys. I mean, at least I know the first game. You know, Chris Mannion didn't play. There, you know, the 2-way signing, he didn't even play them. So like, they're just. You're talking about getting close to like half the roster when you combining standard roster guys, 2-way guys. I mean, there are still like individual takeaways, like Vando. I'm sure we'll get into him. I know you talked about him on your show. He's looked like really, really good. I'll just say he's looked great. And it's not like obviously offensively. I know he had a good game yesterday or last night against the Warriors. Show a little bit more off the bounce juice, a little bit of finishing craft, which is something that, you know, for him will be definitely welcome in terms of being more of an offensive threat. But just physically, like the way he's moving is the most impressive part to me. Like I know the shot's not there, the offense will come and go. The screen navigation is what it kind of is what it is, especially at his size, being 6'7", 6'8". But just the way he's moving, the fluidity. You mentioned how. You know, you hear a lot of things, you know, before, you know, during camp or even before preseason games. There's a lot of storylines, chatter, talk. One of the things was JJ saying that it looked like they had the pre-injury Vando, and that's something that feel like it's played out. Like Vando is looking like what he looked like back in 2023 before the foot injuries really start to catch up to him. Like he is moving extremely well physically, and that to me that's been. I'll just say, yeah, that's been the biggest standout to me on a positive level, at least. Just the fact that he's moving and playing the way he is.
I agree. I think that is the biggest takeaway through the first 2 games is how good Vando has looked. And especially like the start of that Golden State game, he just set a certain tone there with jumping the passing lane, reading the action that leads to LA getting out in transition. Then on the very next possession, he doesn't stop. He pressures full court and forces a jump ball and helps LA get out to a 7-0 lead. So he, from the full court pressure and making guys uncomfortable, making guys have to give the ball up and just slowing down a team's initial action or just getting into their early offense. That has been really encouraging. I think after, so I rewatched the game this morning and I thought the screen navigation was better than I remembered in real time. There were a couple of instances for sure, most notably the one where he gets just smacked on the screen from Draymond, and then that leads to the altercation, we'll say, that they had. And they've gotten into it now several times through the years, despite both being clutch guys. So there was that possession, and there was like one or two more possessions where he didn't do the best job navigating a screen or kind of forced a switch that I felt like he probably could have prevented. But I thought that the screen navigation was better against the Warriors than it was against the Suns. And
For sure.
overall, just such an impactful defender. I really think it's been him and Deandre Ayton, who I want to get into in a little bit, carrying the Lakers defense for the most part through these first couple of games. But it's also been the offensive end where LA has still been primarily using him in the corners, more of a weak side guy, but I think they've gotten a little bit more creative with how they use him, with either dribble handoffs or having him in certain 3-man actions that just forces his guy into the fray. And if you're not playing up to touch or at least kind of around the 3-man action, then you're going to give up potentially a handoff or a pull-up 3 to like a Gabe, or when the Lakers have their full complement of guys, that's going to be a Luka, that's going to be an Austin. So I think there are things that they've done offensively with him, and then he's just crashing the glass at such a high level where, the turbo button's been on the entire preseason with Vando, and he had a putback against the Warriors. He also had a really nice play where he created a turnover, then it gives the ball back to Gabe, he cuts to the basket, then gets an and one. JJ said after the game it was the first time he's ever seen Vando do a deceleration Euro step. That was one of his finishes as well. So he's been the most impressive player to me through the first couple of games, and I want to kick this into the future here with, like, does this change how you view Vando within the rotation? Does he now, I think a lot of the conversation has been Marcus Smart versus Rui Hachimura for the 5th starter spot. Does Vando kick down the door and say, like, I need to be in this conversation? Or is this more of just like, maybe he's higher up in the bench pecking order and he's more like the 7th man versus being like the 5th starter?
I don't know if we've had this conversation. I don't remember if it was on one of my last times on your show, or maybe it's just like something we talked about off camera. But I remember I mentioned him as a potential starter. Like when we were talking about the theoretical 5.
Might have been on the show. I think it was on the show.
Might have been on the show. And I was like, why wouldn't you put Vando in there? Like, you talk about the things you need from the 5th starter. Like, Vando very much brings what you need, at least defensively. And that was me saying that. And I say all that to say, I'm not, like, I said that back in July, I'm assuming. I'm not at the point where I would put him in the starting convo, like, or consideration, but he's definitely high up. I mean, the reality is, like, he's going to be a day one rotation guy. I know the top 6, the four, Austin, Luka, LeBron, DeAndre, Marcus Smart, Rui, and honestly, at this point, I mean, we'll obviously see how the last 4 preseason games go, how the rest of the next couple weeks go before the season opener, which is like creeping up pretty rapidly. Like, that's in 2 weeks from tomorrow. It does feel like, just based off availability and the fact that he's healthy, it feels like Rui would have, and also the continuity, like Rui would have the edge. But Marcus Smart, let's just say he's the 6th man. Like, maybe it's a matchup dependent thing where either Vando or Jake LaRavia are your 7th and 8th man. Like, if you need a little bit more perimeter defense, you're going to go with Vando earlier. If you need a little bit more, I guess, all around offensive game, maybe you go with Jake, who's still a fine defender in his own right. This hasn't really changed. Maybe I also came into it like optimistic about what Vando could be after, being able to finish a season right, and then being able to get an off season to get right. It's not so much changing how I view him in terms of the rotation, but what I will say is, and this reminds me of last season, like Max Christie, like there was a feeling, I think you've spoken on this, like that 5th starter spot was almost like his, like he had to take it, right? Like he had to take it from, we went through the D'Lo, Cam Reddish. I think it was just those two, and then eventually Max Christie.
I think Dalton start for like a game?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
a couple
started.
games.
There was a stretch. He started. Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
stretch. All right, I was about to say there was a third guy, but I can't remember who it was. Yes, Dalton. Like it was like they cycled through guys, and then eventually he got put in that spot, and he just held on to it, and he took it. Obviously, different points in their career. Vando's a veteran now. I think it's his like 8th season in the league.
Yeah.
So I think he was a 2018 guy. Yeah, 8th season.
Eighth season.
Different spots. However, this to me, if to get a starter, like he's gonna have to like show that not just this is gonna come from like injury, whatever, but or like underperforming, but he's gonna have to actually like do this consistently, not just in preseason, but even to the start of the season. Because the other thing is when you're a starter, you're usually playing at least 24, 25, 26 minutes per night. We haven't seen Vando do that in a while. So physically, like he also just may be a guy who, like, to play with this burst and this energy, you may want to keep him at a 18, 20, 22 minute guy, like kind of like what the Thunder do with Alex Caruso, rather than play him 25, like 26, that. 27. Yeah, like that's a
really good call.
Yeah. That's how I view Vando just in terms of spot rotation.
He does seem like to me a guy who is best in like 3-4 minute bursts, and you can technically do that with the starting group, but teams like to typically go with the starting group for 5-6 minutes, right? Like you just want to get into a certain flow and get certain reps with that unit together. Typically the way the Lakers have operated for years has been LeBron is the first guy to get subbed out, and he's the guy who takes that break around the 7-minute mark, 6-minute mark, and then he comes back in to close the quarter. So I'll say that. So the two things I've referenced all summer, and the audience is probably sick of me talking about it, but so I went back and I calculated. I think they had like around 20-ish games where they had most of the projected rotation or like the full strength rotation last season post Luka trade. And in those games, Vando played 14 minutes a night and was basically tied with Jordan Goodwin for the 8th man role. It was a matter of like decimal points of Jordan Goodwin a little bit behind it, but they were effectively tied for 8th with the starters, DFS as the 6th guy, Gabe as the 7th guy, and then Vando and Goodwin there as like the co-8th men. And then in the 36 games he played last season, he only cracked 20 plus minutes in 6 of them. And in all 6 games, the Lakers were without at least one front court starter, if not multiple. So just based on the way that JJ used him last season, he viewed him more as that 8th, 9th man type. He viewed him in that more like 12, 15, maybe 18 minute top range when the team was at full strength. So I entered with a certain level of skepticism in terms of Vando's potential role, and with how much hype Jake LaRavia has been getting, even before camp started with some of the scrimmaging stuff. I was hearing that he was one of the standouts, and then coming into Rob and JJ both mentioning him unprompted, him earning several shout outs during camp. Like, I felt like Jake was in the driver's seat for the 7th spot in the rotation, but I think Vando is making that a real competition and might even be ahead of him right now based on the first couple of games. And I'm still with you. I think, if anything, I actually feel stronger in my conviction that Marcus Smart should be the 5th starter after seeing the first couple of games. I think Rui's had some nice deflections and steals. I think he's got 3 steals across the first couple of games, but his off-ball defense, especially against the Warriors, I thought was really subpar and sloppy. And he lost Steph. He lost Moody a couple times, and and then against Phoenix, I thought Booker cooked him on the few possessions he guarded him on the ball. So I think I have more concern, I guess, with Rui starting and being that wing stopper or potentially even point of attack guy, depending on the matchup, if it's a bigger ball handler. So with the way that they've shifted to drop coverage, and I think that's been another thing we should probably just get into here, is like there's been a real shift defensively in terms of they are now playing more drop coverage. JJ wants them playing up to touch with DeAndre Ayton and Jackson Hayes leveraging their mobility. And with that style of defense, I think that's tailor-made for guys like Marcus Smart and Vando, and not as much for a guy like Rui, or at least to be like the primary stopper in a lineup. So what have you thought of the defense through the first couple games, and how does the now actually seeing? I thought we knew they were going to switch to drop, like they kind of had to just with the personnel, but being this selective with the switching and far more drop coverage, what have been your first impressions, and how does that potentially affect the rotation?
See my face, YouTube audience, when he asked me how I felt about the defense. That says it all.
I'm glad I'm not the only one here
it's,
that is. Yeah, it's been rough.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Generally, how I felt about the defense, not the greatest. The drop expected. I was more so surprised in the first game, not about the drop, but just like how deep Deandre Ayton was on some of the drops. Like he got a block.
Well, JJ Redick was surprised too, as he said pregame against the Warriors.
Fair enough, he did. Yes. But yeah, I was surprised. So when JJ said that yesterday, I was like, okay, that makes sense, because granted, the play I'm referencing and I'm thinking of, I think it was against Grayson Allen, and he blocked him at the rim. Like he came in like, someone can pull it up.
I think Austin got beat off there was a screening action or ball screen for Allen. I think I don't remember if he rejected or crossed over. Then he got by Austin, and then Ayton was pretty deep in the drop, and then he blocked him.
Like he was right at the rim, and right when Grayson got to him. I mean, just some technique things needs to be worked on. I don't think it's been bad, just in terms of specifically the drop part. But I do like JJ did say that he feels like between DeAndre, Christian, and Christian Koloko and Jackson Hayes, like they have three of the most mobile like defensive centers in the league. It's like a bridge too far for me to get there, but I get his overall.
A little bit of coach speak there. Coach hyping up his guys. I mean, Jackson for sure, and DeAndre I would say is above average mobility defensively. Like he's not like wrong. I wouldn't say they're the most mobile. I'll say that.
Yeah, but I understood his point, and because of that, they do need to be play higher up. Because to your point, or more up to touch on screen actions. Because to your point, like some of the screen, like there aren't a lot of great screen navigators, defensive screen navigators on this roster. I'm just thinking like Gabe. Strong at it. Marcus Smart, strong at it. Vando, you said it. Like he was better against the Warriors than he was against the Suns, but he's still. If there is a weakness of his defensively, at least in terms of guarding, that would probably be it. And to me, like that's really in terms of the main rotation guys, like that's really it. So if you can just close that gap just a little bit and have DeAndre engage or have Jackson engage more at the level of the screen, I think that would just help things look better. Portland deployed him in such a deep drop, and that kind of burned them a lot because of the poor screen navigation. And guys will just have pull-up threes or have an open runway to the rim. I think DeAndre's shown a higher level of engagement as a rim protector, as a shot blocker, as just a general defender in just these two preseason games compared to what he showed in Portland. But I think over the course of an 82-game season, or just specific to opponents, the up to touch is the way to go with all of them. Because even with having the size, Jackson's tall, DeAndre's tall, bigger guys, like they're still not the traditional, like they're not Rudy Gobert, they're not Brook Lopez in his prime, like they're not those guys. So it's about figuring out the strengths of this roster, and the defense has been rough, and anything to keep them out of rotation would help, and I think just playing a drop will help do that alone. Because anytime they get in rotation, it feels like the offense wins, and not wins because you got them in rotation. It's just like it feels like they're going to score. Like anytime the Lakers opponent gets in rotation, it's like, oh, there goes 2-3 points right there. That's just what it feels like. I know that's not the case, but that's what it feels like.
No, I agree with you. I think the one thing I have had a little bit of an issue with the drop in terms of I don't think they've done a good job of consistently playing up to touch. I thought it was better in general against the Warriors, but there were still Steph got a couple of, I forgot how many. He made at least 1 3 off of their drop coverage. It might have been, he definitely got a few good looks off of the drop coverage. And I think Ayton, I think he, like, the rim protection has been awesome. And I want to touch on him. Like, we could just transition this to an Ayton conversation. I think it's been, like, he's made a real impact at the rim. It's not just been blocking shots, altering shots. You're seeing guys drive and get by the initial line of defense, and seeing Ayton in the vicinity, and all of a sudden, you know, they're doing the Steve Nash kind of dribbling out of the paint, or looking like picking up the dribble, looking for a kick out pass or something. So he's had a real impact. And I think that is one of also the biggest takeaways for me, is like just seeing the difference with having DeAndre Ayton in there versus Jackson Hayes, and the way that opposing offenses treat him, and the fear that he strikes at times in opposing offenses. But I think the playing up to touch, and like we saw some of his limitations. I think Golden State in general is a difficult matchup for most centers, but Quentin Post was getting some pick and pop threes. Draymond getting pick and pop threes. I think he blocked Draymond on one of them, but with the picking and popping, I thought it was difficult for him to cover that necessary ground. I thought he was a little bit too low. Then there was also several times just in general drop coverage where he was too low and not playing up to touch. And that's against Steph Curry, who, forget up to touch, like, you got to be just touching Steph Curry when he is on the floor, because that dude just needs a sliver of space. Don't do that. Don't do that. He just needs a sliver of space to... Yeah, we're gonna have a second viral moment here. He just needs a sliver of space to get a shot off, and you know, with Steph, he just needs space, and it's over. So I would say, and to be clear, like, that's something you coach up, you watch with film, and I think DeAndre will be better with that. But I thought it was improvement from game 1 to game 2. But I think if I have one like nitpick with his defense so far, it's been, I think he hasn't defended as well in space as I thought he could, or at least could last year on film. But that could just be a conditioning thing early in the preseason he gets better at. But overall, I think that the screening has been impressive. He's made contact with the majority of his screens. He's been a good soldier. He's bought into the system. He's been really effective defensively overall. The rebounding's been there. He's crashing the offensive glass. Needs to catch and finish some of these lobs, but I think, again, that's more of a rust rhythm thing. Like, what have been your first impressions of DeAndre Ayton?
I've been impressed more so with, like I mentioned earlier, his engagement defensively. Like, that's been, and to be clear, and I think this is something that you could say for almost any player or just the team generally. Like, there is something to be. It's encouraging that just generally there were improvements from the first game to the second game, just all around the board. And yeah, I think that even goes to DeAndre. I think that goes to DeAndre as well. Engagement, the playing in space, conditioning, also the context in which he's playing with. Like we talked about this off camera, there's probably a human element of, I don't have my guys with me. And that's especially the case in the second game, where it's no Austin, no Luka, and no LeBron, versus the first game where at least you have Austin out there. Like the playmaking just isn't there. So I think offensively, like, he does need to finish. Like, they're just opportunities he should just finish. It does feel like he could be more of a focal point than he has been offensively, but
they haven't really posted
the obvious. Yeah, like, and I asked JJ after the first game, just like, that was an important emphasis going to the first game, and he was like, you felt like they were kind of doing it, and maybe not as much. It does feel like there could be more engagement offensively, honestly, but again, they don't have their playmakers, they don't have their best 3 players. Last night, I'll overlook that, at least for one game or a couple of games, just because the context of the situation. But I've been impressed. I've been impressed. Like, it's one thing to say, like, I'm gonna buy in defensively, I'm gonna do all the big man stuff that they need me to do. But he's actually shown, again, not within the best context of the roster and who's available, that he's willing, not just willing to, but he can do it, willing to do it, and he'll do it to the best of his abilities. And I'll expect it to grow once that conditioning ramps up. Once the context improves and he's able to lock in or key in on certain things. Because, when they do get the, all the guys available, I doubt he's going to have a lot of post-ups. Like, maybe here and there, exploit a mismatch, exploit an assignment, whatever it may be, or just to keep him involved here and there. but he's going to have to make his make his impact on the defensive end with the rim presence. Like, I will say this. I'll finish on like it is funny that like to your point, like guys dribbling into the paint, they see DeAndre and they kind of like evade the situation. Like it just reminds me of just like he's so ginormous. Like this is a legit 7-footer, like two whatever he is, like 250 plus, 250, 260.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's a humongous dude, and he just does big man stuff that, I mean,
I'm flipping it on you now.
I'll
Oh man, we can't podcast together. This is too unserious.
Too unserious. No, he just does stuff that like he obviously like they had an all NBA caliber big man on the roster within the past 10 months, and Anthony Davis. But even in that like the small amount of time they played without AD, like I forgot like how valuable that stuff was. So to see it like re-implemented in the system on the team is like it's like a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you.
And you nailed it. Like we've not seen one possession with Luka and DeAndre Ayton together. And there were times last year where I thought Jackson Hayes was about to get a non-taxpayer MLE contract in large part because of Luka Doncic setting him up. And there was that one game, remember, where he started like 9 for 9 or something crazy. And it was basically all just long dumps or finishes. I think it was against New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. But it might have been like for a half, he was perfect or something. But just some crazy Jackson offensive performances last year. And I thought like we saw a difference with Gabe in there in terms of the playmaking. Gabe had 5 assists, and I thought he had some nice pocket passes, a couple of lob passes to DA that he wasn't able to finish. But I think we also saw against Phoenix, they tried to exploit the mismatches of them switching, and there's a couple times he drew fouls just on post-up attempts. Lakers still need to work on their entry passes. That's long been an issue for a lot of their guards, is a guy will just have post position and then they can't get them the ball. But I think like the offensive end overall, I think the offensive process has been good, considering they've been without 3 of their top 4 playmakers in both games, and then 4 of their 4 in the second game. So no Luka, no LeBron, no Austin, no Marcus. Like that to me is their top 4 ball handlers and playmakers. So the fact that they've even had some offensive success, and we've seen guys in roles that they're not necessarily going to be in the regular season. Like I'm still very bullish on this offense. I think this is an offense that should be ideally top 5 and maybe even knocking on the door top 3 once they get rolling. Any other takeaways from the first couple games? Anything we didn't touch on in terms of player stuff? Like, has the rotation changed at all? I know you said with Vando, you didn't want to necessarily put him in the starting group, but like, Rui's been a guy to me that's probably underperformed through the first couple games, but he's also someone very dependent on being set up by the playmaking. So kind of similar to Ayton, I think he's someone who I think he's going to look better once they have the full squad. But like anything else stood out through the first couple games?
Yeah, I mean, quickly, the transition defense is just
oof.
It's making me sick. Just bad.
Yeah.
But I will say so that's a negative. I think some of that's just gonna we're going on like I feel like I've just talked about poor transition defense for so much.
It's like a Laker. It's just like a Laker thing that you have to be back. I mean, I remember to your point about like Laker beat. Like when I joined, I remember one of the first things I don't know why I remember this, but when I first joined the beat 2020-2021 season, one of the first things that Frank Vogel talked about was we need to clean up our transition defense. And that's been like a Lakers mantra every season. Doesn't matter the coaching staff, doesn't matter the player personnel. For whatever reason, they've really struggled in transition.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just bad. The one thing I will say, and I'm curious to see how this play out the remainder of the preseason, but also going to the regular season, offensive rebounding. Jake LaRavia, a plus on that. If Vando is able to play, like go from that 14 to 16 more to like a 20-minute guy, his offensive rebounding presence, even if he's not getting the rebound, just his general activity to maybe open up opportunities for someone else to get it. And then Deandre Ayton, just again having a bigger body in there who can just grab offensive rebounds just off of the fact that he's as tall, as big as he is. Like that, I remember last season, like the margins was such a significant talking point throughout basically the entire season. Obviously, you can create margins in a variety of ways: free throws, turnovers, shot attempts, go on down the line. Getting into your offense early, which is something that I asked about throughout training camp. It's just hard to get such a good read on it when you talk about, let's say if we don't have it, let's get to the main ball handler. Well, in your first game, you only had one of your three, and in the second game, you had zero of your three. So I don't know how to read that when your main ball handlers aren't really playing. But the offensive rebounding, that's the way you can create, extra possessions, widen those margins. And again, like LeBron, Luka, and Austin, those aren't really their strengths. However, so Jake and Vando, like they're not going to be probably playing as much just off of the strength, or they're not going to be starting more than likely and playing as much off the strength of just having those guys available. But I could see this based off of what we have seen, that going from a deficiency last season to it could be average or even above average or possibly good. And if they can create that margin in their favor, like they're probably going to be a high free throw team. The turnovers, we'll see. I could see this being not the best team sort of taking care of the ball, but that's something we'll see once guys are able to gel. But if they can be a high free throw and a decent offensive rebounding team, like that's something. Then we're talking about a different formula and a higher 3-point shooting team, like we saw to end last season. That's something that's like, okay, like those are real margins that you can create, and you can go from possibly a high 40s to possibly a low to mid 50s one team.
I love that point. That was one of my 3 takeaways last night on last night's show. I think so. Last year they ranked 23rd in offensive rebound percentage, 20th post Luka trade, and so clearly in either just the big picture of the season or post Luka trade, they were a bottom third offensive rebounding team, and it was not a point of emphasis for them. But JJ mentioned that during camp, that was something that they wanted to emphasize, of a part of the conditioning, that the championship shape that he wants them to be in is crashing and getting back. And I think these two things might be intertwined a bit in terms of just in rewatching and being able to pause the game and kind of dissect some of these things. Like, I have noticed they will often have 2 or 3 guys crashing the offensive glass, and that sometimes leads to a disadvantage defensively if they don't get it. So there have been times where they do get it, right? And I think they've had 12 plus offensive rebounds in both of the first 2 games, but the possessions they don't get it, all of a sudden now it's like Gabe and Jake LaRavia back, or Gabe and Rui back, Austin and Rui back, and they're going up against 3-4 guys, and then they end up it's a layup, it's an open kick out 3, it's a foul, something like that. So I think they have to find that balance, and maybe being only setting 2 to the glass, or I think that's something that you can dissect on film and just kind of go through over the next week, which brings me to the final question here. So the Lakers have a week off. They don't play again until Sunday. Rare in the preseason to have this much time off, but they play the Warriors again Sunday at Crypto.com Arena, first home game of the preseason, and they're going to have 4 or 5 maybe 5-ish days of practice here. So over the next week, what do you think should be the biggest point of emphasis for JJ and the coaching staff, and what they're focusing on in practice? And then what are you most looking forward to with Sunday's game, presumably having Luka and Austin and Marcus and Maxey and Adu? We don't yet know about LeBron's status, but should have 5 of the 6 guys that they were missing by Sunday, based on at least what JJ has said in terms of Marcus, Adu, and Maxey all returning this week. So assuming that they're basically at full strength, potentially minus LeBron, what are you most looking forward to, and what needs to be the point of emphasis?
My bad. I was listening, but also I'm going to just say, LeBron tweeted 18 minutes ago, the decision of all decisions, October 7th, 12 p.m. Eastern time, with the salute emoji, king crown, hashtag the second decision. And it's a 10-second clip of him walking up to a seat on a basketball court I can't tell who's sitting across from him. The second decision coming soon. So we'll have something to discuss.
Well, I guess that's something to look forward to tomorrow. I will.
Tomorrow morning.
Now I have some texts and phone calls to make now after this show. I'll say this. Last time he did something kind of like this, remember, around the start of free agency, it was an Amazon ad.
Amazon Prime ad.
And
yeah,
I think Prime Day, isn't Prime Day coming up at some point? I would not be surprised if this is some type of advertisement that LeBron is just deceptively acting like that. But I mean, if there's a second decision to be made, then that's a whole other storyline.
Well, yes. Well, it's coincidentally about an hour ago, I got an alert saying tomorrow is Prime Big Deal Days.
Epic so it's going to be a Prime. Yeah.
So
it's a
could
Prime
be.
ad.
We'll see. But
I think so.
It's a Prime. Anyway, what I'm looking forward to, I mean, obviously, we don't know the status of LeBron for the Warriors game in LA. But
well, apparently his future with the Lakers, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
yeah.
What I'm just
kidding.
looking. I want to see the Luka DeAndre pick and roll. I want to see where they're at in terms of their. It's like they talk about like pick and rolls are like it's like dancing. You have your dancing partner. I want to see what that looks like. Like where's their chemistry? Are they able to get even more? Like DeAndre was more offensively engaged yesterday or last night.
Mm-hmm.
Can there be even further engagement when you do have at least two of your primary ball handling guys, and the one being Luka? Like JJ said, like part why they were excited to get DeAndre was because of that partnership with Luka. So what does it look like when they're able to have both guys? They're able to have really all their guys, or most of their guys, the main guys available. So that's the one. Again, this is like LeBron being the LeBron. Yeah, no, I was gonna say the LeBron being in flux makes this like tougher to reach. Because I was gonna say offensive rebounding. Like I want to see if that carries over, but again, like it's one thing for it to carry over with like Vando and Jake and those two guys starting. What is it like when they're in bench rolls like that? But those are the main things, and then the transition defense, like. I want to, and I guess this goes into offensive rebounding, like the emphasis on both. Can you both crash and get back? Kind of like to your point about like maybe you send. I think I remember saying this like last year there were just certain guys who had the green light to crash, and then certain guys had to get back. Like that was just what it is. I wonder if we see more of that. On Sunday, just like Jake, Vando, DeAndre, maybe even Rui. You guys are crash guys. Everyone else is a get back guy. Marcus, you're a crash guy. Everybody like just more role orientation from a actually crashing and get back standpoint, because they do need to put pressure on opposing teams' defenses in terms of finishing out possessions, but it can't be at a cost of 20 plus fast break points or 20 plus transition points or some of these easy looks that they're giving up in transition like that. That just can't. They're already going to be rough in the half court defensively. I think just based off personnel, more than likely, I think that's how it's going to be. Or they're not going to be top tier, at least. If they finished this season as a top 12 half-court defense, I would be shocked.
I was trying to think of like something you got to like. I was trying to think of what you have to do if they finish in the top 12 now. Like you got to, I don't know. So maybe an offline conversation. I would love to hear that. The first things coming to mind are, probably not pod appropriate, but echo everything you said. I would like to see what the offense looks like, because I think the offense, I've really liked the intent of the offense, and I don't know yet. I haven't checked Crangis's latest tweets, but I know with the Suns game, in terms of, I believe, offensive organization, it would have ranked like 9th out of all of the Lakers games last season. So already there was some real improvement in terms of the caliber of sets and just how organized they were. And I assume part of that was because they were shorthanded and they needed to be more intentional with how they were running the offense, not having Luka and LeBron and some of the other guys. But I would say like I continue to be bullish on this offense. I think Luka and Deandre Ayton are going to just have natural chemistry in their pick and roll. And we've seen him get open for lobs with Gabe Vincent and Austin and Jake LaRavia. And seeing that with Luka and even LeBron to a lesser, slightly lesser extent, just because I don't think they'll run as much pick and roll. I'm really excited to see that. So that's on the offensive end. Defensive end, I want to see what it looks like also with the starters. And like, I think they're going to take a step back in some ways, just because replacing, let's just say it's Vando, LaRavia, and like Gabe moved to the bench for Austin, Luka, and LeBron. I think that lineup is just worse defensively. But with the improved offense and LA, I think, humming at a certain level, and we know what Luka does in the first quarter, and like I could see that sometimes the best defense is a great offense, and maybe if the Lakers are scoring more, they're able to get back more, set their defense more, and that leads to better results in the half court defensively, and they can keep teams out of transition. And then point of emphasis for me, the offensive end, again, I think it's just got to be reps and them going through certain things, but defensively, it's got to be picking up in transition, matching up in transition, communicating. Like, I think the communication has been god awful through the first couple of games. Guys are, sometimes someone thinks they're switching, someone thinks they're staying with their man. There's been several inbounds plays where they just botch a simple like split action or screening action and they give up a backdoor layup. Too many guys are getting backdoored. Too many guys are losing shooters around the arc. So I think some of that is just preseason sloppiness, but some of it is also like a personnel thing, lack of athleticism, lack of quickness. They have played two smaller, quicker teams in Phoenix and Golden State, so it's also kind of matchup based. But I think there's a lot to clean up on the defensive end. I think I will admit I've been a little concerned and a little bit like maybe their floor defensively and their ceiling are both a little bit lower than I anticipated. But overall, I'm really excited just to see what this looks like. And hopefully get LeBron out there at some point with these guys, because I think ideally you get 1 or 2 games. I know JJ said 2 dress rehearsals. Ideally you get 1 with the full squad, but it seems like we're not going to have clarity on that for a little bit here.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now because I was just trying to remember when's their first game against a non because they play Phoenix and the Suns twice in so they don't play another like a non-Phoenix Golden State team until the Mavericks game
Dallas
in
game
Vegas. Like that's their
in Vegas,
first,
yeah.
Yeah. That's their first. So it's also, which I think could be a good thing. It could be a not as good thing. Just the fact that they're playing the same teams twice within a certain period of time. Like you can see how they improve from the first matchup to the second, and then they close it out against Dallas and Vegas, and then Sacramento and LA. Like that's something that I forgot to mention earlier, but there's something that was also on my mind going into the next couple of preseason games. Like, are you able to improve? Obviously, like the personnel may be different, but are you able to hone in on certain things that were just exploited in those first matchups? Physicality. That's the other thing. Like, there's been, to your point about communication, there's also been like the Lakers, and it feels like they've been lacking in the physicality department. At least in the first game, especially. Maybe the second game a little bit better. Hey, Vando and great Draymond, y'all got it. Like, good job. Y'all brought the energy that the Lakers need to bring, or we need to see present in those games. Good job, Vando, and good job, Draymond, for helping out. Always stay ready all summer with Draymond Green right there. Always ready for that.
Well, and that's actually a good point, because like I think one of the lessons could also be that with the way that DeAndre and Vando have carried the defense for stretches so far, if you are, whether it's Vando or Marcus as that fifth starter potentially as the primary defensive guy, that player plus Ayton plus an engaged LeBron, and I think Austin is fine against secondary backcourt guys, and then Luka with the new shape he's in, and I think he's effective as a help defender. Like, you can see the outline of an effective defense, or at least around like a league average, maybe slightly above league average defense with this group. But it really depends on how they start games, because if it is starting Rui, I think your offense could be like league's best offense, or again, top 3, top 5, whatever. But I think there's a real defensive ceiling and floor there in terms of just, I don't think you have the personnel to play the style of defense you're trying to play right now. And it's going to end up being more of like an offensive lineup, and then the Banshees come in various forms. But I think you're ultimately limiting how many good defenders in that like mix of good offense with good defense. So we'll see. There's a lot of questions for JJ to figure out here, but I think there is a lot to like. Despite my concern with the defense, which it is what it is. I think it'll get better. Vando, Ayton, Laravia, Gabe shot his ass off in the Golden State game and looked more like the Miami Gabe. There's a lot to be. Austin he's balled out in game one, went shot for shot with Devin Booker. So there is certainly things to take away from this, that despite the results, it's process over results in the preseason. And from a process perspective, there have been some real things to be encouraged by. But Khobi, I know I got to get you out of here. Anything you want to plug before we go? When is your show coming back?
Yeah, coming back exactly 2 weeks from tomorrow, October 21st.
Awesome.
We'll be back, Lakers Insider on Bleacher Report. So in 2 weeks, we're going to have a different format. We're going to switch some things up. We're excited to get that back started up. I'll have a story on kind of like what we've touched on, takeaways from preseason, or the first couple of preseason games should be getting published a little later today. But yeah, those are the couple, or the two main things coming to mind. And obviously KHOBI _Price on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. And yeah, that's it for me. Appreciate you having me on today's show. 7th time. You said Brady. I'm going to take that one.
Take Brady, yeah. I'll put your X account in the description below. Follow Khobi on X, and also make sure you subscribe to read the Southern California News Group. That'll do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you then.